and I want to go ahead and welcome Hill Nation. Welcome back to the Hill of Justice Live. Last night we came on expecting to have Angelina Cortez and attorney Lolitha Hale with us live, but we ran into some internet issues, and that simply wouldn't have allowed us to go ahead and carry on the conversation the right way. Rather than force a bad connection, we made the decision to continue the show and break down the issues and come back tonight once with those technical problems that we addressed. And tonight, Angelina Cortez and attorney Lolitha Hell are here. Many of you may recognize Angelina from her work as an actress appearing in Country Wayne popular comedy skits. But tonight, she's not joining us to talk about acting or entertainment. She's here to tell us a much different and far more serious story. Angelina is also a U.S. Army veteran. She says that she spent years fighting through Georgia's court system on over two different properties in Clayton County. She alleges that it began as a mortgage and property dispute, eventually involved foreclosure proceedings and other actions, disputed court filings, and questions surrounding service, pending appeals, and ultimately her physical removal from one of those properties. She has since taken her allegations beyond the courthouse. She filed theft by deception report to the Clayton County Police and has sent complaints and notices to multiple government and oversight agencies. Now, before we begin, I want to establish something very clear. These are Angelina's allegations, and the fact that someone is named in her documents does not mean that the person committed misconduct or committed a crime. We're going to follow the documents, though. And what we're going to do is follow the timeline to this, and we're going to ask questions. So you should, as you do all the time in Hill Nation, please comment your questions or sentiments, and we'll try to respond in kind. And not to be outdone, we also have Attorney Lolitha Hell here, and she became the center of a bizarre Clayton County, Georgia property dispute that ended her with her being arrested at her
Ah,
house and claimed it was her own. So, as always, the Hill of Justice, we try to go ahead and bring it. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe, like, and comment. And for anybody who's watching tonight who knows absolutely nothing about this case or these cases, please look them up. And we have some evidence that we have here. Brother, how are you doing
yes,
tonight?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'd like you to go ahead and take the ball from here and take it across the goal line.
Wow, I think you've done a good job of introducing our guest. I had the pleasure of meeting Miss Cortez, well-known actor here in Atlanta, and I've known Miss Hale for quite a bit of time. She's a well-established attorney in Clayton County, and she's born and raised in Clayton County, as a matter of fact. So I think without further ado, uh, now that they've been introduced, let them tell their story.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll let Ms.
So
go first.
Say
continue.
again.
You could go first and tell your
Oh,
story.
oh, thank you, counselor. Thank you. It's so much. Well, first, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you so much for being willing to hear what I have to say. Because there was a time when I believed that all I had to do was get before the judge. Right. I think I thought like many other people in this country. Right. I served this country. I took an oath to defend this country against terrorism, foreign and domestic. And I didn't quite know what that meant when I was 17 years old when I took that oath. It wasn't until I was mid 40s that I began to understand what that really meant. That terrorism on a domestic level is what the citizens of this country have to deal with on a daily basis from people who are employed by unknown organizations that literally come in, steal our properties, and tell us to go sit down somewhere and don't open your mouth. And they attempt to create fear and separation amongst those of us in the community so that we feel like it's just ourselves and no one else can understand. And it's amazing, but yet they do not train the clerks that work in these places. They don't train them. They don't train the deputies to know what a real writ of possession is comprised of, because it doesn't do their goal any justice. I mean, if I taught the people who work here in Clayco till I die in Humbra, right? Because that's the quality of people they want, the level of education that Clayton County is gunning for. So they can keep people who are, just barely getting by, maybe financially, and just need a job, right? May have not gone to college, may not really have any civic duty within themselves, and they've not, had an opportunity to maybe travel the world or join the military or see things outside of their community. They want people to be dumb, deaf, and blind. And I thought all I had to do was take my case before the judge and present my case, and that the law would be applied to that, and I would leave victorious. That is what I really thought. And how foolish, how foolish of me to believe that which I was programmed to believe. So now this type of conversation is not one that can be had with most people, because they're still under the guise that what did the judge say? Not realizing that it's the judge, it's the administrative law clerk masquerading as a judge that's willing to lie, willing to steal, willing to do ex parte communication, willing to do things behind your back, uh, steal and diminish your due process. And that's what I've lived through. I was probably about, just to give you a little bit of a backdrop, I was probably about 145 pounds when all this started. I was healthy. I had no problems. But this photo that you see here was after 7 years of dealing with the torment. And when I say torment, I'm talking about the torment at the hands of Geronda Carter, Superior Court Administrative Law Clerk, as well as Keisha Wright Hill, who is the Magistrate Administrative Law Clerk, and how they worked together to steal my property with a writ that lacks signature and seal. Right, here they are. Geronda Carter's on the far left. That's number one. I appointed her in my papers to in camera, meaning I did not necessarily need an oral argument, because judges who are or administrative law clerks can also be appointed to do specific things based upon the handbook that they are trained from. And Geronda Carter is her background is within constitutional law, so she does know right from wrong. But was she willing to do it? No, she wasn't. Geronda Carter refused to, after I paid for a quiet title on both properties, well, on one property in particular, we'll start with that one. She refused to give me any kind of hearing, no matter what I did. And what she began to do in that case with Keisha Wright Hill, Geronda Carter decided that she was just going to send me an order saying that the case was dismissed because I did not serve the organization. But I thought to myself, what is it that I can do? And thank God I have great counsel, right? Because I have a brain and I use it. And I was counseled that I should go and grab a sworn affidavit from the Cobb County Sheriff, right? Because he is also
Angelina,
a constitutional
I
officer.
hate to,
Go ahead, sir.
I don't want to interrupt you because this is getting good, but I want you to do one thing for us. So
Yes.
I want you, for the layman like me, I'm just a street cop. I'm not lawyers like you and my brother and them. Okay. I want you,
Who's a lawyer?
in layman's term, to and pretend someone's just hearing the story for the first time.
Yes, sir.
And tell us in layman's term what happened briefly, then go into those details. Tell us from beginning to end, but just real simple, so someone's grandmother or a dumb street cop like me can get it from beginning to end. All right.
So here's what happened. Basically, I filed some paperwork to prove that I own the property outright. And I asked the judge to review that in what's called a quiet title. And you can find that in if you ever go to court and you want to see what you want them to do for you, you can actually, put in for that quiet title. And then you submit your papers. And when you submit the papers, the judge will look over it. And what she was supposed to do was she was supposed to take an internal lawyer known as a special master and give them the assignment of checking the land records to see if what I'm saying is true. And so what Geronda Carter chose to do was not do any of that, even though I paid for it. She refused to appoint anyone to look into the court records, because even in my papers, I made sure there were certified copies of what they would find in the land records, so that there would be no ambiguity there. She refused to do any of that. That's just like going to have your car washed. They take your money and tell you to go ahead and pull on out and come back another day, and they'll let you know when, right? So she refused to do the job, refused to do anything on it. What she did do was she worked with Keisha Wright Hill, because what the company did was they tried to file a dispossessory, like it was a foreclosure that happened, when no foreclosure ever happened. They lied. But Keisha Wright Hill granted them a writ of possession. And I wrote Keisha Wright Hill and told her, I said, wait a minute, this case is with this same subject matter, which is this property at this address, is already under the Superior Court, case number XYZ. So they held up, they didn't do anything, and they waited and they waited. And so what Geronda Carter did was she tried to get rid of me. And what did she do by doing that? She says, oh no, this case is dismissed because, Angelina, you never paid and sent a copy of this case, which is called serving, right? The act of service. You did not serve the opposing party. Well, I said, well, that's not true. So I went to the Cobb County Sheriff and I asked him for a document called a sworn affidavit, swearing under the penalty of perjury that he could be arrested, right? And do time if they found out that he lied. Did you or did you not indeed serve this company? And he came back and said yes. So I got the sworn affidavit. I took that document and put it with what they call a certificate of immediate review, so that Geronda would have to reconsider and say, oh, well, maybe I missed that. Then she was supposed to continue with appointing the special master and moving forward with what needs to be done in the quiet title action. But what she did was nothing. She sat on the case for another year or so. But then 6 months later in that case, she says that, 6 months later, what happens is I see that there's a counterclaim. And I'm thinking, how could there be a counterclaim? Because when I put in my motion for summary judgment after that first 30 days, they had about 30 days to answer. And when they didn't, I said, here's a summary judgment. This is when, if they've not answered, you only have 30 days to answer, right? If you don't do it within that time frame, now the other party, which was me, I can ask for the judge to rule in my favor. Well, she didn't do that either. What she did was allow Greg Crevo and Drew Powers from McCalla and Raymer to file a counterclaim into the case almost 6 months after their period of time. And it's all in the record. Now, these are statutory, like this is not proper at all. Like this is completely not proper. You're not supposed to do that, any of that. But I guess she thought I was going to stop at each level. Like, okay, you can't go any further. But I'm willing to push the issue, because why didn't you just appoint the special master, right? Because I paid for the case, and then you would have your answer. But in the record, I went down to the Superior Court and I asked for a copy of the record. And in there, for that counterclaim, if they didn't do it within those 30 days, they lose any kind of say. But on the upper right-hand corner, there's a file stamp that has her name. It says Geronda Carter. That means that someone had either sent her their verified answer, right, 6 months later, which is outside of the time frame. And then she received it in her office and file stamped it. I didn't receive a copy of that, so there was no service for me. There's no USPS certified mail return receipt that they can prove that I ever got a copy of that, because if I look at a copy of that, I now know that you were operating in ex parte communication. But you did that to me because she figured that these lawyers who are her friends or her associates or whomever they may be, that they could pull one over on me. So what did she do after that? She didn't do anything. She allowed Keisha Wright Hill in the magistrate court, who cannot make The 1983 Georgia Constitution is a body of law of laws that they cannot, this governs what can happen in the state, right? The magistrate court does not have jurisdiction or venue to litigate any land cases. That's why it's small claims court. $15,000 is their max. And you don't have to be a lawyer to know that. And so what does Keisha Wright Hill do? She has the company who claims they bought my property to go and take a writ of possession that was 155 days expired and also lacked signature and seal from the clerk of court, which would have made it valid, and had them to come knock on my door and put me out of my property on September 8th of 2023, while my quiet title case about that land was still in her office, still pending because she wouldn't do anything on it. What happens next? Well, come December of that year, now that was September, December, this company, A Plus LLC, that is, they're utilizing a lawyer named Lowell Chatham. Lowell Chatham claims that he sold my property. Now, how can you sell a property while we're in litigation? And why wouldn't Geronda, and I have oodles of emails to her office and to Kim Ponder, who is her staff clerk, saying, hey, they claim they sold it. That can't even happen. She wouldn't do anything. Until today, she still won't do anything. And so after they came and put me out of my property, Geronda Carter then recused herself from the case. Like she can just walk away from that. And that is when I was been pissed. No, ma'am. You're going to bring your big behind right back here, because you're not going to walk away, steal and lie and think that you're just going to get away with it. We're not going to do that. So I continued to file into that case. Then it went to Aaron Mason, who then recused himself from the case. It then went to Rooks Malone. Rooks Malone. Say again?
Why did Aaron Mason recuse himself? Do you know why?
He recused himself from the case because I had at some point prior to, I had a criminal case that he was very angry with. He would yell at me and scream at me in the courthouse. And I'm like, I didn't hurt anybody, but because I didn't want a lawyer and I said I would speak for myself, that pissed him off. And so he felt like he was like, no, I've already know this woman. I don't want to be bothered with her. Right. So apparently I'm persona non grata when it comes to the Clayton County Superior Court, which is fine by me. But if you're doing what you're supposed to do, then we shouldn't have any issues, because I'm not rude. I understand order. I'm a service disabled veteran. I understand chain of command. I understand how to operate in authority, and I'm not disrespectful. But that began to make me very angry, because now Rooks Malone gets the case and she sends me one little page, one little order with 2 sentences. This case has already been, it's moot and blah, blah, blah. She didn't even investigate it, because I'm sure they're having conversation behind closed doors. And so then it goes to Jewel Scott. I don't know her. Then she has it for a period of time, and then she recuses herself. And then Robert Mack takes it. And then, at that point, I guess they sent it back to Geronda. So right now it's in Geronda's queue, and she's done nothing. And she thinks that she is going to continue to do nothing. But I'm going to apply pressure everywhere that I can, because my voice counts. And if she can walk around and ask people to vote for her, and then sit in here and steal from people and lie and do and act in an ultra vires, which means overreaching her station, doing more than she has the ability to do by law and by statutes or codes, somebody has to say something. And so they put me out of my property. My special needs dog died. I lived in my warehouse for almost a year. I've had to move back in with my mother. And then they didn't give a hoot about that. Nobody wanted to hear it. They wanted me to shut up and go sit down and die in the corner, while Geronda Carter would be able to do whatever she and Keisha Wright Hill thought they could do. Well, fast forward, I had been emailing and sending letters to so many people. On my Instagram, Surviving Clayton County, There's a video there where I showed that I mailed off 44 priority mails with a copy of my equity dossier outlining every one of the things that have taken place in both of the cases, because I had 2 townhouses and that I was doing a quiet title on, and that I had already done merger, which I won't get into the merits of the case, but it was the conduct. I wrote people like Alika Anderson. I called, I left messages, I sent documents in the mail. I couldn't get any response. I wrote the probate judge. I wrote all of the Superior Court judges. I made sure I sent a copy to all of the magistrate. So everyone in Clayton County is aware of who Angelina Cortez is, but no one there is interested in doing right. They're interested in hiding and covering up for one another. And it has been my deepest desire to see a federal probe be kicked off in Clayton County, because there's too much. And if you'll do it to me, which I'm no one special, I'm a person who believes in the Lord Jesus Christ. I believe in equity. I believe in treating people fairly. But I couldn't even get any help from Shanae Clemens, the clerk of court. And I mean, everyone there seems to be only interested in lying, stealing, and covering for one another. And I've said it, and I'm going to continue to say it. And if you don't like it, do what you're supposed to do. Do when you campaign, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Just do your job. Stealing and lying is unacceptable. And even though you think you're doing it behind people's backs, the Lord still sees you. And whatever a man sows is what he reaps. And that's the world that we live in. So don't think that you're just going to walk away and go unscathed. They tried that on my second property. And there's a lawyer named Kane St. John who told me, you can't do anything about this. I went to Yale. I said, well, today you going to hell, okay? Because I'm about to dog walk you, bruh. That man, I finally somehow, by the grace of God, was able to, I had to go before Robert Mack. Robert Mack wouldn't even let me get on the record. I had to stay back in the galley, right? And he wouldn't let me speak. And he literally told this lawyer, well, why didn't you just file an affidavit? He is coaching him from the bench in the court. And I'm like, okay, so I see what we're doing. And so he literally writes him an alleged writ of possession with his from his letterhead, which we know is a no-go. On February 2nd of this year, I was picking up my daughter from school, and I get a frantic call from my tenant who's living in the property. And she says, oh, they're here putting me out. And now I don't personally have a beef with the current sheriff, Levon Allen, even though in times past I'd not been able to get in touch with him. But I know from the first time when they came and put me out while I was under appeal, that I was to not play any games with these people. I need to go see the sheriff and let him know that there's a tort that is pending, that I can bring litigation against the sheriff's office, right? And against your bond, because you can't execute these writs that are void on its face. And so, we met for the first time, we talked, he was kind enough to hear me, and I appreciated that. But this second time, that guy was standing outside of my home thinking he was going to put my tenant out of the property, even though my notice of appeal to the Georgia Court of Appeals had already been accepted by the Superior Court. And we were under supersedes. But Kane St. John, who works for Nigerian Capital, and if we start to look up these companies like Nigerian Capital and A Plus LLC, they are lawyers who allegedly buy properties that foreclose, but you can't beat a merger. And I'm not going to try to litigate the merits of my case, but the point is, the judges are trying to do anything they can to run me over and think that she doesn't know the next step. So we're going to beat her to it. The first one, we're under appeal. Why are you sending the sheriff here? And so they put me out of that house. My dog died. I gained so much weight. I got sick. I was like, I'm not giving up. And the second property, just this year, Kane St. John is standing outside knowing we're under supersedes from the, this is your law, is it not, sir? You went to Yale, so you know better, right? No, he doesn't care, because they're willing to steal, and they're willing to lie, and they're willing to run you over because they feel like she's not a part of the bar and we can do what we want with her. But yet, had I not gone to go see the sheriff in advance to let him know that I understood my position, and I also understand his position as the highest ranking constitutional officer in the county, that he has a duty to understand what the courts are doing that put his office in position for litigation. Like, you will have a tort if you do this thing. And so thank God I went in, I spoke with Captain Wilson. I was able to finally, thank God, on the first ring, got Levon Allen on the phone. And I told him, I said, these people are outside my house now, even though we're under supersedis. He told me to hold on. They called me back, and while they were waiting to call me back, I was driving down to the sheriff's office. And the lawyers there lying to the sheriff. I'm like, you're a lawyer and you're lying to the sheriff, telling him that I ran out of time. And I said, no, here's when the hearing was. Here's my file stamp. That's 7 days. And by the date, it only took me 4 to be able to file my notice of appeal. So I'm well within that time. They told that lawyer, Kane St. John, to go ahead and kick rocks and get off the property, and that they would not move on setting me out of that property or doing anything else until they hear from the Georgia Court of Appeals. So what does Kane St. John do? In May of this year, he turns around and files a new writ of possession on the property again. So it's crazy because they do everything they can to badger, to harass, to utilize what I have come to understand is abusive litigation of a pro se litigant. You can't just take someone's land, and it is insane. But it is so well documented. I've kept every email. I've kept every return receipt. I spent thousands of dollars over the last 7 years sending out certified mail return receipt, and I am going to stand by it, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to have my voice heard, to have my story heard, and to be there for the other residents of Clayton County that have also had to deal with this blatant disrespect and just people who feel like we're trash and they can do what they want to us because go get a lawyer. Lawyers are not going to help you because some of them are part of the problem.
Yeah, and some of them are like you said, they're still in property from homeowners. And these judges are facilitating it. It's so ironic that you said some of the things that you said, because that is kind of what tangibly happened in my case. First of all, McCullough Raymer is a very large law firm that's been around forever. And so they have a lot of influence on the bench, with judges. And they have a tendency to get whatever they want, number one. Number two, you probably don't know that Geronda Carter is a licensed real estate agent as well.
Interesting.
And yes, especially in light of the going between her and Keisha Wright Hill. Keisha Wright Hill is the chief magistrate. And she, in my particular case, as you know, I was arrested on my property. My car was towed from my property. I had a squatter on my property. And Keisha Wright Hill's office refused to give me a writ. And it's just very ironic that they were able to get one fairly quickly as it relates to your property.
And 155 days past due and expired.
Right. There's a lot of procedural issues when you just horrid. When I listen to all the procedural things, nightmares that happen in your case, it makes me cringe because they know lay people are not really, and you've done quite well, I might add, as a lay person. And they know lay people don't know a lot of the civil procedure,
Right.
and they're not going to try to educate the public on what they can and cannot do. What they try to do is help facilitate getting a writ of possession to lock people up, get people out of their property. And it's so ironic that you said that it's a group of lawyers who own this investment company that are buying up all these properties. As it relates to my property, what a lot of people do not know is that it was a lawyer involved.
What?
involved, and the magistrate court, Keisha, she knew and knows this lawyer. This particular law firm worked with the tax commissioners for Clayton County for quite some time, and a lot. I'm told, I don't know how true it is because I've not verified it, but they in fact experienced me with this procedure. They were ex officio sheriffs for the tax commissioner's office. Are you familiar with that, Victor?
Yes.
Yeah. Because the statute says the only people who can foreclose on your home is the sheriff. It has to go through the sheriff's office or the coroner's office. The young man, the young attorney in my particular case, he told two lawyers who I had hired because I was busy working, right? Um, that he had a special arrangement with Clayton County government to hold private, non-judicial foreclosures on the Clayton County courthouse steps. And yeah, he said it twice, right? So so that's what he did. He had a foreclosure. He held a foreclosure sale. Him, a private attorney, on the Clayton County courthouse steps, and you had trial judges, seasoned trial judges, Judge Fletcher Sams out of Fayette, and Judge Arch McGarity out of Henry. Both of them are retired. And what happened in my case, very similar to yours, Ms. Cortez, is that the judges kept recusing themselves
Mm-hmm.
until they got to a senior judge. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh,
Whenever
yes.
a senior judge come aboard on the case, you need to be suspect because they are going to feel free. They're getting their pensions, and they're going to feel free to do a whole lot more than a regular sitting judge would be willing to do, including break the law. It's the
All
number
day.
one. Yeah, they're not going to lose their pension, right? If
Mm-mm-mm.
they, like in my case, upheld attempted to anyway, upheld a private, that's just like me coming to your house, Miss Cortez, and I put a notice on your house. I put notice in the newspaper, which is supposed to be placed in the newspaper by the clerks at the request of the sheriff's office. But me as a private attorney, I put a notice in the paper as though to make it appear as though it's the sheriff's, right?
Mm.
It's just a lot of fraud that's going on. That was fraudulent. The statute is clear. But these two seasoned retired judges, they upheld it. I saw when I was in his courtroom today, he was filling in.
You know, I wanted to go ahead and piggyback off of the the both of you. In doing research for this show, um, there have been some Georgia citizens that have sued and sued successfully and won. Some of the same predatory practices that you two have been unfortunately had to go through.
Hmm.
Um, of course, they're not the only ones out there. There are many of people who do not have your resources to deal with this. How in the
Right.
world can those people be able to reach out to people who do and to help them through what they naturally go through, and how they're bullied by the courts, how they're bullied by other executives that are out there in Clayton County?
How, and
Ooh.
your question is how, what can they do as lay
What can they
people
do?
with very limited resources?
Hmm.
First of all, I think that some type of centralized collection of information should be developed
Hmm.
because clearly there's a trend that's taking place in Clayton County, and it's nobody's interested in investigating it. In your case too, Miss Cortez, you said there was no service. How about this attorney filed a petition, and he called it for ad valorem tax. And I've never had I bought this property for my mother. I never had any problems with taxes on that property. But in the body of it, it was to foreclose on the house based on some alleged outstanding HOA dues. There were no outstanding HOA dues. It was paid by certified check.
Mm.
The attorney, the HOA attorney, and instructed the HOA not to credit the HOA account. So all he saw was equity.
Right.
He
That's
saw
it.
he saw when the property was purchased. He saw how much it was purchased for. And you can just type in the address and you can find out how much. You can kind of calculate how much equity would be in that house. And they're going around stealing people's houses in order to access the equity in their house. But again, back to your question, there should be a centralized collection of information because it needs to be a class action lawsuit filed against not only Clayton County,
Come
but
on.
the judges in their
Come on.
personal capacity as well,
Yes.
because you are operating outside of the law.
Correct.
That's right.
And
That was my next
almost
question.
like-
Right.
It's like racketeering.
Mhm.
It's like they're violating RICO because they're all conspiring.
Mhm.
Because I kept going to magistrate court. I'm like, why? I've never had any difficulty. I filed a dispossessory against a tenant who's in that house.
Mhm.
It was the squatter. She was not my tenant. The tenant before her and the squatter after her. I think they were related, actually. And I think they were planted there by the attorney.
Mhm.
And Keisha Wright Hill knew about it. And she would send out certain judges, associate judges, to hear the case.
Marcus Thorpe, Chastity Bridgewater.
He's one of them. John
Yep.
Parker is another one. And they came up with these outlandish rulings. And I'm like, what's really going on here? You know what I mean? I know this is not the law. Why are they ruling in this manner? It's kind of crazy. Why can't I get a writ of possession? Because they're all working together.
100% RICO charges.
All of the judges. But I do believe Keisha Wright Hill, and I do believe that Geronda, she's a real estate agent. She knows what the law says.
Say less.
And so the thing about property, the Constitution recognizes how precious
land
owning
is.
property is, and that's why there's so much due process, constitutional due process included when it comes to the taking of people's property. But a lay person, once they see a piece of paper with a court stamp on it, they most of the time they give up because they don't know how to attack it, and a lot of times they don't have the resources in order to have that judgment attack. In my particular case, where this judge, the seasoned judge, issued that order telling him, the attorney, that, oh, well, she didn't pay this, then you could foreclose, but you have to. The order does say you have to file the law that governs judicial foreclosures. And he did not do that, which he can't do that anyway. He can't do it. But the key here is that what you said, there was no service. He didn't even have a summons issued in my case.
Right.
Now, most people would just assume if there's a lawsuit that they don't even look at the fact that there's no summons. A layperson won't notice that.
Right.
But there was no summons in my case. And if there's no summons, the statute says there shall be a summons. If you don't have a summons, you can waive service,
right,
but you can't waive summons.
Correct. That's
without
a
summons, you do not have a pending action.
Correct.
You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
No pending action without a summons. So Judge Arch McGarity, who been a judge for 40 years, who every time I'm in his courtroom and he's on a civil matter, he goes through a little checklist. Oh, okay, I see when it was filed. Let's see if it was served. But he didn't do that on my case. I have old transcripts
Mhm.
that shows what he typically does when he approaches a case.
Yes.
So that brings up
No
an interesting
summons.
question.
Go ahead.
And I guess I'll direct this question to you, Ms. Hale. Ms. Cortez said something very, very interesting in the beginning. She said that, when this all occurred, it's like, okay, well, this is not right. I'll just take it before a judge, and I know I'll get justice. And then you brought up an interesting point. And contrary to popular belief, cops, even sheriffs, my job was to protect the courthouse. I really wasn't sitting through trials and stuff like that. My job was just to make sure Brian Nichols didn't come and shoot up the place. And the
Right.
majority of the cases that we made or I made when I was a detective, most of those people took pleas. I would like to think they took pleas because I didn't make up cases on people. I didn't go and frame people for murder or robbery they didn't do. But the one thing I've learned once my situation happened was what was amazing was all the incestuous relationships. So,
Yes.
you're in a courtroom, you hire an attorney, but no one really tells you that these folks went to law school together or they both worked in the defender's office together at one time or the district attorney's office, or like in my case, the judge didn't disclose her husband was friends and worked with the DA, and she was friends with her, and they were
Which
having
the
ex parte conversations. How do we solve that? Because the average person, I've seen people say, "Well, I can't get an attorney to even take my case because of relationships." It's because of the case. It's a good case. It's a case that could show things, but some attorneys, well, I don't want to take that because no doubt they're friends with people in the judicial system or they went to law school with somebody. In your estimation and your experience as an attorney, how do we solve that? Because that's a serious problem. And I don't know the answer to that, but there's so many incestuous relationships, and these people are trying your cases in the courtroom pretending, and then they go out and they're having a drink the next night, and there's no way they're not discussing the stuff. In your expert opinion, how do we solve that?
well, I think that it's going to be a very difficult problem to solve
Right there. Right.
because they don't do it out in the open. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Right.
So, and they're not going to tell on each other. For instance, in your particular case, the judge was Eleanor Ross.
Right, Eleanor Ross, but
Her
better
husband
known
is
now as the screamer. But go
I
ahead.
knew that was coming. I knew it.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
yeah. And her husband was Brian Ross, right?
Correct.
And he worked with Tasha at some point in time in her office, didn't he?
Absolutely.
Tasha is the DA
Right.
in
And
Kountry
she's the one that initiated this case. Right.
Yeah. And I know for a fact, from personal experience, that she weaponized her office. And it's very unfortunate. And she does it primarily against people who speak against her and black men. That's been my experience in her office. Um, she is a political prosecutor, and she really needs to go.
That's
She
true.
really needs to go. And I don't see you saw when Judge Glanville, and I think overall he's a good judge in Fulton County. You know that young thug case.
Yes.
He ex parte communications. They do it so often that it's
That's the
like
point.
the
Right there.
problem here is that in
Mhm.
most courthouses, you see the district attorney's office in the courthouse. Do you see
Hmm.
the public defender's office in the courthouse?
Yes.
No, you do not. So they build these little relationships and bonds.
Right.
In Fayette County, district attorney's office is right straight across the hall from the judge. I don't believe that prosecutors should be housed in the courthouse. But if
Good
they
point.
insist on prosecutors being housed in the courthouse, they need to have the PD's office in there as well, right next door, so everybody can watch what everybody is doing. Because this type of setup with the DA office being in the courthouse, they develop these, like you said, friendships and relationships. And
It's
then
not.
a lot of these judges come from, they have prosecutorial backgrounds. So they know each other.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And
Correct.
with me, you can't find a judge, you can't even find a lawyer to say that I hang out with them. And I did that early on in my practice for a reason, because I do not want my client, I don't care who they are, I do not want the integrity of their cases compromised because of my relationship with somebody else.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
You know,
And a
like, well, I
relationship that
can't do
you
that
know
to
you
so and
can't
so because that's
disclose.
my friend.
Exactly.
No, these
Right.
people's rights are, you know,
Mhm.
are
Yeah,
more important than friendship.
and
So
you
yeah,
know, you're right. And I think that another point that needs to be said to people who don't understand what happens behind what we would talk about court relationships is that many of these attorneys and judges and so on and so forth, they're coming up and through the same, they're matriculating through the same systems that they started out very young as junior attorneys. They work, they go from one law
mhm.
firm to another. Some of them were former PDs, now they're prosecutors, and then from them they get their own practice, and then they go back to defense. Many of them are sitting, drinking, having all types of relationships
Sleeping
afterwards.
together
And
too.
I think right, that too. And add on to that, and I thought you brought up a very, very, very good point. They do this so much that they forget that they're breaking the law and that is unethical, and
Right.
it is commonplace for this, and thus when it's brought to their attention, they get snapped back into a fog, and they're like, oh my goodness, I shouldn't be doing this, or
Mm.
that they'll just have to go ahead and cover up what's going on. And this happens in every single city, all the cities that I've been in, and did law enforcement in.
And
It's
I
no
want to
different
add
than
something
your city.
before you say something, Ms. Cortez. Another thing that's fascinating, because you mentioned it in your case, is all these conflicting rulings. And what I've learned is that it doesn't matter what the law says or what case law is, because we had some very, very strong case law that actually not just preceded my case, but the Supreme Court came up with two cases during the time when they first came out with the indictment that clearly said you can't bring a novel case before a jury. Those cases can only be heard civilly, right? But
Mhm.
what I found is that it doesn't matter what the law says. A judge can rule for or against and just come up with an excuse to do it, or articulate a case law that's not on point, that does not apply, and say, well, this is the reason I'm denying this or denying that. Because
Mhm.
my case is a classic example of that, because there's conflict in rulings, not just in different circuits, but there's conflict in rulings right here in the 11th Circuit. So no
Mhm.
one has any clear idea, okay, when is using the restraint chair against the law or not. And then if you watch jail TV, they're using it the exact same way I use it every day, and they're not being prosecuted.
Right.
So it shows that they can come together and create any scenario and prosecute it. And they know 90% of people are going to take a plea. And if you don't take a plea, then they do what the screamer judge did, rig the trial. So,
Right.
you got all these conflicting rulings, and because in your case you talk about the conflicting rulings, and the sad part about it is,
It was
when
like
we
out and out, no, absolutely no law to support it.
to support it, right,
None.
right, and let's
Crazy.
not forget the dancing dummy DA that took fake case law to the Supreme Court. But the thing about it is this,
Under Tasha.
right,
Hmm.
Right.
right. So, but the thing about it is this, I think Ms. Cortez beautifully put this. We all grew up with this respect and awe for that black robe,
Don't
and
do
we're,
it.
yeah, and we're expecting to go before people who are fair and impartial,
Hmm.
and we're thinking that they're going to rule by the law, and it has nothing to do with who they know or who or if they got any teenage issues with men or unfulfilled sexual fantasies that they bring to the bench. And you're not expecting that. You're just expecting people to deal with the law, by the law, and that's it. But we found a very, very different reality. Those, and I've heard things over the years And I'm gonna be honest with you. I was like, I don't believe that. I think whatever. But now I believe it because I've actually seen it. I've experienced it. So when people start saying things that judges have done or said in courtroom that seem far fetched, don't think it's far fetched because
No.
I think we got 3 cases here, and we're just the tip of the iceberg. There was a study that said that 50,000 people every year are wrongfully convicted. I think they're wrong about that. I think that number is higher than we can
I
ever
believe
imagine
that.
because
Mhm.
how many people get this proverbial plea gun put to their head, and even though they're innocent, they don't want to risk the chance of going to trial,
Right.
knowing that a judge that's supposed to be a referee, really, what these judges do is they pick a side, and if they pick your side, you're going to win, and if they pick the prosecution side, you're going to lose because
Fortunately,
that's what they do. If that judge already has a way that they want this case to turn out because of relationships or vendettas or whatever, then they're going to do everything in their power to make that happen.
right.
And that's a dilemma people face when they go before the courts. And that's why you see so many people take pleas or people just go away because they feel they're up against a force that they can't deal with. And then we've essentially created a legal we haven't, but they've created a legal mafia where lawyers get together and they use the court for lawfare
Don't forget the
and they're
judges.
able to roughshod their way through.
Well, I called them, I identified them long time ago as the judicial mafia.
Right.
And yeah, it's like and it's not all of them. And I don't like to try to throw everybody in the same.
Of course not. There's some good ones out there.
There are always exceptions, but yeah, it's a problem. It is a huge problem
And
when
if I
you
may
do
also,
not have
go ahead.
faith in the court system. And the problem, what people don't know is that there are laws. There are certain things that are the law says shall take place. Law said it must take place. So people need to read the statute and make sure those words are shall and must. Okay. Now then there's discretion. There's some discretionary rulings. And when there's a lot of areas of law where the judges do have discretion. And that's where they hurt people the most.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because,
Absolutely.
the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal says, well, yeah, it was kind of like messed up, but the standard of review is any evidence. They have the smallest scintilla of evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And the reviewer in the appellate court would say, oh, yeah, it was bad, but there was some evidence to support that discretionary ruling. And if it's discretionary, then that's when their little relationships and things come into play. If people
Absolutely.
only knew what goes on, I call it behind the robes. And I'm actually working on a story concerning what goes on behind the robe. Political connections, whether or not if you donated to somebody's campaign, you know, oh, well, they donated to my campaign. We're in the area of discretion. Well, let me do something for them. They
Yeah.
scratch my back, let me scratch their back. We've got to get the politics out of judiciary. That's the
Absolutely.
only time it's going to ever change. We've got to get rid of all these PACs. We've got to get rid of this lobbying because you're going to always find corrupt judges with those type of factors in play.
Very
Donation,
well said. Very
PACs.
well said. Ms.
Yeah.
Cortez, you about to say something?
Yeah, and let us not forget those clerks of court, right? Because something that I realized, I was in Clayton County doing something, and I was going past the there's a particular building where you can go and get police reports, etc. Right? It's over by the train tracks. Can't think of the name of the building. And so I'm over there, and I happened to notice that the last name is Bray, Bray. I guess I do know the name of the building. There it is. So then I remember that a friend of mine, a very close, dear friend of mine, had a judge, McCain, McLean, I think is his last name, up in Douglas County, steal his property and lie the whole way through and drag him. And I was like, there's nothing new under the sun. And so when I went up there, I think the clerk of court, she was Bray. I said, "Oh, I see what's going on," because you don't have to live in the county in order to work there, which is the problem. Is part of the problem, because
Right.
you can live in Alpharetta and commute to Clayton County, and you down
Mhm.
here giving people hell day and night, running up your your little slush fund for when you retire, because they literally take each one of those docket numbers and securitize them. So they're making money every time. That's why Aaron Mason was pissed that I wouldn't take a lawyer. And I mean, he would, I mean, I'm telling you, he must have got hot under that little robe, because his little behind was just yelling and
Jesus.
screaming and acting a fool. I was like, sir, I thought you were supposed to be head in charge. I thought the governor sat you here. Shouldn't you be a little bit more? I'm thinking that you're supposed to be that guy. You're not that guy. You really think you're a house ninja. Like, that's really how you look at it, and that's how he was acting. And I was looking at him like, I'm not afraid of you, because the word of God tells me to fear
Mhm.
not their faces. So all that huffing and puffing and all that, honey, let me tell you something. If the Lord sees it fit to not let your behind wake up tomorrow, you'll
Mhm.
be on somebody's t-shirt and they'll be moving along. So be careful how you treat people, because the same dirt
Absolutely.
that they do to people comes back around. I mean, I didn't know much about Victor at all. And to be honest, as I said to him, I'm going to say it here, just so that the people who watch and those who go and eventually migrate over to my Surviving Clayton County page. I remember before I knew Victor, I didn't know anything about him. But I was like, even the sheriff went to jail. Good God, Clayton County, what the hell? Like, that's kind of where I was. And then, and I told Victor this on a phone call, and I think maybe even face to face. I said, I apologize for even speaking on something, because I was under so much duress. I felt like
Stressful.
nobody in the county gave a hoot. Nobody. But
When it
now
comes to
that
your
people see
property,
me,
that is
yeah.
stressful. That's stress. That
Hmm.
is that
And
is
I
beyond
appreciate
stress.
I appreciate the apology, but let
That
me
is
say
an
this in
apology,
your
sir.
defense and a lot of other people's defense. The legal system, this judicial mafia, as Attorney Hill so eloquently called it, uh, they work hand in hand with the media,
Oh
and
yes, they want to
and just
shame you.
like right, and just like you got these judges that don't disclose relationships and they rule any way they want to rule, despite what the case law says and articulate it that way. They're also working hand in hand with the media, and the media will only put out what they want. Just like a judge will take a side on whether he wants the defense or the prosecution to win, the media does the same thing. So even if there's evidence to show that you're innocent, even if there's something suspicious about the case, they're going to report just enough to get the outcome that they want. And if they want a guilty verdict like they want in my case, they're going to try and put enough out there to taint a potential jury. So a lot of what you said, no doubt, is probably stuff you heard from Mark Wee Wee or my drunk Uncle Tom Jones and
No,
those
I don't
81
need them. I
there.
don't know any
Don't talk
one of
about
them,
Yeah,
to be honest.
right. Exactly. But what I'm saying is if you listen and only hear that particular part, you know, that they put out that particular type of propaganda. But if
well,
but
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 you're right
if they
about the
were
media.
really looking at everything and everything that's sent to them or whatever, they would really have some investigative reporting to them because there was so much suspicious things that came out of that particular case. They never did a story that folks went and found people who had been in restraint chair a year ago and say, "Hey, were you in a restraint chair?" Yeah. Well, guess what? You're a victim. You can get some money. If something happened to them, why did they leave the jail and not go to the hospital and not get fixed? And if they were really tortured, and you mean to tell me they just left the jail and went on about their life and they were
I think
checked by
everybody knows
medical
that it
and
was a witch hunt against you. I
exactly,
think everybody knows that. But
exactly,
See, I
exactly.
know that now for
Well,
yeah,
sure.
we know that now, but I'm talking about the everyday person that just hear the news, and the news can do just what we're talking about. What some of these
absolutely.
judges do. These judges decide, I don't care if he's innocent or not. I'm not going to give him qualified immunity. Let me say this. What's so fascinating to me about both of y'all cases is this: someone shared some very interesting information with me, and I would never disclose them and put them in danger. And what they told me was incredible, but I believed them. They said, listen, at that building, what they call it, the Russell B building, the 11th Circuit, whatever, they've already decided they're not going to give you qualified immunity. They've just decided that because it's a case where clearly I should have had qualified immunity. And what they're saying makes sense because if you look at these rulings and you look at the motions that the attorneys filed and the case law they filed, it was clear cut. But it was clear, denied, denied, denied. So that's why your cases are so fascinating to me because if you have someone on the stand that is not there just, okay, this is the law, this is what we're going to do. I believe each and every word of what Ms. Cortez is saying. I believe Ms. Hill because I've seen it, I've experienced it.
A lot of similarities.
Exactly. And my contacts have been listed. They're not going to give you qualified immunity no matter what. You're up against it's already been decided. It's even questionable how that particular judge got my case. Allegedly, they're supposed to go through some computerized system, but I doubt if that happened. I'm pretty sure it was, hey, I'll take that case. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
I know what you ladies are saying. I know what you all are going up against. You know, it's this is a great show. We may have to do a part 2 to this because there's so much meat on these bones. And I mean, and we didn't even get to the part of the story where Attorney Hill in that situation where she was actually arrested.
Oh my God.
Yeah, actually arrested for her property.
Right. And I do
Right.
want to get to that because I think that that is one of the most fascinating and most bizarre portions of what happened to, of course, government officials and especially an attorney. You're talking about a practitioner of the court, a ward of the court that this happened to. It's just insane. And I think that to do that proper justice, we need to go ahead and set up several clips and bring, Attorney Hale back for that portion of it. But also on that end of it, for Angelina Cortez, yours is still pending. And thus, we have to have you back on to go ahead and talk to you about and see how the resolution to this is going to be, especially in light now that this is in the public light even more so than it was before, and see what other officials are going to say about this. Because today, everybody here did a lot of name dropping. And when that
yes.
happens, people start getting really upset, get real
Yes.
tight, and they want to
Yeah.
go ahead and start accusing or
Be
blaming
tight.
everybody else. Right.
Please
And
be tight. Please
yeah,
be as mad as I was.
yes.
Please.
Yes.
Because
And I want that.
please.
Right.
I think
Because
there
I'm gonna
should
tell you
be
something.
some type of public
Yes.
grading of judges.
Mhm.
You know, you get the little surveys. We need those
Yes.
as well for judges, and
Right.
then you be able
I'm
to
all for
develop
it.
these patterns. Then we need courtroom monitors. The JQC can't do it by themselves. To do
They don't want to do anything by themselves. They don't want to do anything.
They don't have
They
the
don't. They
manpower
do. They
to do
do
it.
nothing. I sent
Yeah.
them smoking
You know,
guns,
your
and
police
they were like, "We see nothing." Of course, Stevie Wonder. Of course,
Right.
Ray
Exactly.
Charles. You see nothing.
Well, I think Eleanor Ross was a perfect example of that. I have never seen a cover up on that level where you make a report
Yeah.
and leave the judge's name out. You got to read this report. They did everything in their power
They sure did.
so that no one would never know who she was.
Mhm.
And that way she should just go and sit on the bench and as if though it never happened.
Right.
And that's the one time the media actually did their job. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but
And
that was after the
exposing,
fact. That was still way after
exposing
the fact,
exactly
though.
who she is. And I mean, you got to read this report. It's incredible. I mean, from the possible semen stains on the couch to her
What?
lying.
No,
Send
yeah.
that.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
fascinating report, right?
Let me see
And
that.
which is what made her confess that she was lying. It wasn't
Because she
until
was
they were
worried about the
doing
DNA.
DNA test
Hmm.
that she lied. So she lied during an investigation, but yet
And
this
that
report said
that should have had her removed from the bench if she
Oh, without a
lied.
doubt.
absolutely, but
Yeah.
they said that she's salvageable.
Mhm.
Okay, and you got to wonder what's salvageable about that because if you go before if you swear before a judge and you're caught lying on the stand.
Mhm.
They're gonna send you to jail for perjury.
Exactly.
Yeah, she
But
lied to investigators, and then they were worried at that point in time because the investigators had her dead to right. We put her in the box, and then
absolutely.
after that, they said, "Now we're
And
going
other
to introduce
bizarre
something
behavior,
else."
like when she sentenced to Chris Leeds, the first thing she did was, hey, put on Wikipedia that I sentenced them. Okay, why was it so important for her to put that on Wikipedia?
Right.
Because they
Right.
try to
Was the sentence because they actually did something and you were actually doing the right thing, or you were trying to make a name for yourself? And these are the type of weirdos
Well, she did now.
that wear robes.
She did now.
You would be amazed how many people are sitting in prison right now because of judges and lawyers trying to make a name for themselves.
Mm.
I was
I wouldn't be amazed. I met a
in
lot of them, and I'm one of
Pennsylvania.
them.
In
Yeah,
Pennsylvania, a young lady was sentenced to 200 years up there. It was not my case, and it was politically driven. The ADA was trying to become the DA. She didn't. She wanted to put her name out there, so she
absolutely,
used this young lady who is subsequently ended up being sentenced to 200 years for something she did not do.
absolutely.
We'll talk about that at some point in time. And it's because and she's a white female, but she associated exclusively with black men back in the 90s
Mm.
and her in prison.
Wow. Yeah.
That's a
So,
wrap.
yeah.
Well, I think we need to do a part 2. This has
Let's
been
do
an
this.
absolutely great show.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You
we've
know,
got the
nothing.
different laws too, the new laws governing HOAs. I like to cover that, and I would like to. We're probably having some seminars periodically to educate the public on the homeowners on their rights. Now, I'm just want to say this real quick. The new law, just this one aspect of the new law, it recognized that lawyers and HOAs were stealing people's property. So now, they have an oversight. There's going to be an oversight body. And they said that they put in laws in place where the management company, the subdivision, the management company, nor the lawyers can purchase any of the homes. So it's been going on. Otherwise, we know why laws are created because there's a big problem,
Right.
right?
Right.
So there's been a
Hey,
lot of
before we go, I want to do this. 2 things I want to say. First, Attorney Hill, you now have a show, and I want you to tell us briefly about it so people can tune in and listen to your show. And I understand that I may get the privilege of being sitting on the hot seat of your show. Can you tell us about that real quick?
Yes, it's called Quiet as It's Kept, and it's a radio show, and we are developing the podcast right now as in development. Um, and I'm there with Lily Morgan. Lily is different. She's if you want to call equestrian, a
Mhm.
black female equestrian, and she really has a passion about it, and she does a lot there for children on her farm, for special needs kids and for kids who have behavioral, issues. So we want you on there, Victor, but it's going to be you're gonna take the whole hour. We're gonna need you for the whole hour.
Probably, yes, probably. You probably need to do part 2 and part 3 too. I'm gonna bring the pain. I'm gonna bring the pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I look forward to that. And how do you tune into your show, and when is it on, so everyone will
It's on
know?
WIGO the first and third Saturday. It was every Saturday until like I said, we're in the transitioning to a podcast. So right now it's on the first and third Saturday. Yeah. WIGO, that's the AM station. It's on 1570.
All right, and Miss Cortez, of course, you play on Country Wayne skit as is it Shayla's mom, but you play under your actual name, Angelina, correct?
That is correct.
That's correct. And when and how do we get to watch you perfect your craft of method acting?
Oh Lord, let me tell you. In fact, it's funny because Pam has just started producing, which is amazing because she's been my arch nemesis. She was dating my husband and doing all the most, and so I've gotten to smack her. I just jacked her up a couple days ago, and her numbers are doing amazing. So I get to do a lot of method acting because I just see, you know, unkept liars as being my foe. right? I have a lot of that pent up, especially because I have 4 brothers and I grew up being able to wrestle and, like I'm really good with my hands and all that. So I appreciate being able to have the physicality of my character, because being from New York, being Black and Puerto Rican, and in the Army, I enjoy being active with like fight choreography. So I'm on the Kountry Wayne skits right now at 8:10 p.m. on Facebook on the Kountry Wayne platform. You can see Pam's productions. So you'll see more of Pam Zashery, who plays my daughter, and myself. And then, of course, for anyone who wants to connect with me, you can connect with me on my email, which is called, and here it is, Great Sheriff, Cortez for Clayton at
Wow.
gmail.com.
Okay.
Cortez for Clayton, because I can tell you this, no matter what I've ever done, I've tried to move out of Clayton County. And for some reason, I'm like, oh, I like this. This is so nice. What county? Clayton. What? Okay. And then I'm like, I'm on Lake Spivey. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm moving over here. Wait, what county is in Clayton? I was like, okay, Lord, you win. Okay, you win. So apparently I'm going to be in Clayton County. It's a beautiful county. I think there's so much here, and it's worth fighting for. It's worth being able to take a look at the demographic and understand that there's so many service disabled veterans and their family members that have settled here, that Clayton County is going to be my home for a while. So they better get used to seeing me and finding out that when God sends a prophet into the land, you can believe what you want, but the hand of God shall prevail. And none of their arms are long enough to box with my God, who has delivered me from the mouth of the lion and the bear. Because if Aaron Mason would have had his chance with me, honey, I'd have been locked up back there for a while, because he couldn't stand me. I'm talking about that little dress was tight up under his butt cheeks every time I saw him, and he would try to drag me in there every 30 days. So I was, yes, I did. And I also would go out in front of that courthouse with tears and pray and prophesy to that building. And I would say, Lord, bring righteous people, because your people in this county are crying out for you. I spent a night and a half in that jail back there, and the food that they feed these people, and the way that these ghetto hood boogers, and I say that on the show all the time, but I mean it, that will weave down to their feet, walking around with BBLs, acting stank, treating people crazy. Honey, be careful before you be right back there. Okay, those same judges that sit on this side of the door, one day you're going to be back there, because God does not sleep, nor does he slumber. And by the blood of Jesus Christ, who was also persecuted in this same legal beast, because it is a beast, it seems insurmountable, but the Lord of the heavenlies, the earth and the fullness thereof, who owns everything, I would cry out in front of that place. They would always try to do little tricks, and you're going to have a hearing on Monday. Oh, well, I said, well, how? It's Martin Luther King Day. Next thing you know, they're having it the next day, because they knew that I wouldn't know that. But I would have favor. Somebody in the court was like, oh, no, let me go ahead and give her a continuance. And it wasn't Aaron Mason. The Lord would put things on people's heart to be of a benefit to me. And I never forget those people, because these people literally sit in here and they are demons. It's not, we look at the flesh and we look at their skin tone and we think, well, how could you be doing this? And it's not just about money and land and things and stuff. These people are wicked to their core. And when you see a devil who will deprive a mother and a child of her home, who will sit in there and lie and steal and do everything under the sun, and then walk around and talk about, come and vote for me. Baby, let me tell you something. The hand of God is against you, and you shall not prevail. I was disappointed that Jerome Carter was reelected, but I'm going to tell you something. I stood out there and I said, oh, I understand what's going on, because Aaron Mason got up out of there. Thank God. I know I cried for that and prayed and sowed financial seeds into the kingdom to see that mountain move. But Jerome Carter, I decree and declare, Keisha Wright Hill and everybody else in the Clayton County, anything you working in government and you stealing and lying, may the hand of God begin to uncover your wickedness, because you shall not prevail. And I'm going to tell you something. Those people that are behind you pulling those strings, they're going to cut them strings and let them drag your behind right on off the jail, so you can continue with the wickedness, but you shall not prevail. Before it's all said and done, that those resignations will be signed in blue ink, and or RICO charges will be coming your way. Please do not think that because today you think you've gotten away with something against this woman, against this man, against the faces and the names that I don't know and I may never meet. But the hand of God, Jesus Christ, who is the King of everything, they are against you. And let me tell you something. my daddy don't never lose. I'm calling people from the east, the west, the north, and the south to begin to rise up
Yes.
and begin to get in your prayer closet and start asking the Lord to bring righteous people into position that are not enamored by money and glad to bring sorrow on the hearts of other people and the children of this county. Thank you, Father God, in the name of Jesus, for goodness and mercy reigning. Thank you for opening up doors, because you do have people in DC and other places that will do the right thing. Because when God decrees a thing, who gonna do it? Who gonna turn it? And when the Lord opens the door, who gonna close it? And when he closes the door, who's gonna open it? And Geronda Carter, I'm telling you, the Lord has heard your name out of my mouth and seen the tears. Keisha Wright Hill, you too, because you went on Facebook, and don't think I don't still have it. You threatened me.
Oh, really?
And I'm telling you, I'm going to be speaking your name on every platform. Robert Mack, Rooks Malone, Keisha Wright Hill, Latrivia Case Johnson, Marcus Thorpe. Some people were like, oh, don't say names. No, I got to say it because you did me how you wanted to do me behind closed doors. But now let's see if public scrutiny is okay with you. Because if you don't like it, don't do it. And we
Right.
learned that in kindergarten.
Right.
Wow, the doors of the church is now open.
Amen.
Yeah, I think you sure you're not a preacher? That's that. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, brother, I'm gonna let you bring it home. Oh, also, Ms. Cortez, let Mr. Wayne know if he needs me to ever come and play the sheriff of Clayton County. I am available, and we'll go from there. All right.
We would love to have you, because one thing about you, boy, let me tell you something. I had no idea when I met this man, just when I started to learn about his background, just how much of a renegade. And when I say that, I mean that with all the love of a sister in Christ. Like, I appreciate people who stand up to the bullies, because the harder the harder they stomp around acting like can't nobody bring them down, the harder they fall. And I think you've seen that already, and how God has moved with those who have attempted to persecute you. And he said, you stand by, Victor, stand by. He gave you that name for a reason, because you're a winner. And you have a brother who also, I mean, it's beautiful to see men come together and do things that are righteous. And it's wonderful to connect with other women who are articulate and understanding the law is a superpower. And we're going to operate in that. And we're going to continue to win. And I'm telling you, I see RICO charges coming. You can mark my words by that. I believe the Lord will be bringing great justice and giving an enema to Clayton County.
Well said. Well said.
Well,
Wow, what a great show, brother.
yeah.
Land the plane.
This is how we're going to do it. Ladies, please come back. Okay. We want to go ahead and find out what the resolutions to your cases are. And certainly we have more to speak with Attorney Hill. So, Hill Nation, thank you for spending your time with us tonight. I know it was a little bit long, but it was worth it. And a special thank you to Angelina Cortez and Attorney Hill coming on Hill of Justice Live. You two made it very interesting and very compelling cases for what happened to you both, but we want to hear more from you. If tonight's discussion gave you something to think about, please hit the like button, subscribe, and certainly hit the notification bell. We really do appreciate all your comments. A lot of you have been done a great job on Facebook and YouTube talking about some of the things that we've talked about in previous cases, criminal cases, and even now. So we really do appreciate. And without further ado, we'll see you later. Thank you all.
All right, good night.
This is the Hill of Justice.